You know what you're listening to?
Is that a trick question?
It's the I Still Love This Game podcast with your host, Matthew Damian.
He's an idiot. Don't listen to this. He's an idiot.
The ball game is over. How sweet it is.
Hello and welcome to episode 67 of the I Still Love This Game podcast. In today's show, obviously, we're going to be talking about the Rockets and Warriors and Game 4. And what an incredible game. Sometimes when we're describing games, or great games, or whatever, we go overboard. But given the situation, this was an absolute classic. It was just a pure desperation game from both teams. After Game 3, all the conversation was centered on how good Golden State is and how overmatched the Houston Rockets were. And even with Iggy out, the Warriors jumped out early. I even received an email asking if we've ever seen a game finished in the opening minutes. And I guess it's possible that they accidentally CC'd the Rockets, because man, did they respond. Golden State was up 12 to nothing to start the game, but they only managed 34 points in the first half after that run. The Rockets responded big time on the defensive end. On the offensive end, Eric Gordon sparked them and James Harden put his foot on the throat of the Warriors. A mindset that was captured by one of the most vicious facial dunks in playoff history. Now, I usually rip on the commentary, but Weber's reaction was completely brilliant. And I say that because I'm still shaking my head thinking about it. And what was even funnier was a few minutes earlier I got a message after Harden turned down that open three saying that there's no way that Harden can be the MVP after that. You've really got to love those premature hot takes. Now, the Rockets took a decent lead into halftime, but Golden State exploded early in the third quarter. Curry hit multiple threes again, and normally when the Warriors get rolling like that, it's just a matter of how much they'll win by. The Rockets hung in there behind the intensity of Chris Paul and, of all people, Gerald Green. Now, you might be surprised that I said that because he did take some bad shots, but on the defensive end, his intensity was critical. Now, Chris Paul in the first half struggled, but it was his show in the second half. The Warriors seemed shocked that they couldn't put the game away, and with Eric Gordon and Chris Paul carrying the load, they clawed their way back into the lead after Trevor Ariza hit a huge three. Gordon's first made three after 6 attempts came in the dying minutes and extended the lead. Golden State had a couple of chances late to tie the game, but they came up short under the pressure. And we're tied at 2 games apiece. As the intro says, oh, how sweet it is. Now, if it sounds like I'm excited, it's because I am. What a response by the Rockets. Just think about the context here. They're down 2-1, on the road, up against their nemesis, a team that has put them out 2 of the past 3 years, and they're down by double digits. And this isn't even taking into account all the playoff failures from Harden and Paul and D'Antoni. And then you take into account everybody's writing them off after Game 3. And that was their response. Now, regardless of what happens moving forward in this series and beyond, that was a response fitting of champions. And now it's the Warriors' turn to face some adversity. They now face the reality of having to go back to Houston and win there, whether it's Game 5 or Game 7. And they also face a toughened up mentally Houston Rockets team. And for all their championships, the Warriors have rarely faced a 2-2 situation. They have been to the conference finals 4 straight seasons, and this is the first time it's been 2-2. In fact, the last time they've been in a 2-2 series was the 2015 NBA Finals, and that was nearly 3 years ago. Now, yes, in one conference finals they were actually down 3-1. That was against Oklahoma City. And they battled their way back to claim that series. But the very next series, they were up 3-1, and they lost to Cleveland. And one of the keys to that series was Iggy's health. And he just missed Game 4. Now, are we seeing history repeat itself? I'm not sure. But the Warriors, they find themselves in a long series again, which is exactly what they wanted to avoid. They didn't say that publicly, but the fact that they went to their lineup of death, or whatever you want to call it, from the very beginning of this series showed that they wanted to end it early. And now when you couple that with their rotation being shortened even more, because we don't even know what Klay Thompson's health status is going to be, and we also don't know what a victory like this will do for the Rockets' confidence. Everything seems to be pointing in the direction of a Rockets victory in the series. But don't expect Golden State to simply roll over quietly either. So the next 2 games, or 3 games potentially, should be incredible. And I cannot wait to see how it unfolds. Now, of course, the Rockets and Warriors wasn't the only Game 4 that we've had in the last couple of days. But to be honest with you, it was probably the only one worth talking about in detail. We saw another blowout in the Eastern Conference Finals. As expected, the Cavs did tie the series up at 2 games apiece. And let's be honest here, the Cavs have figured out the Celtics. The Celtics are completely overmanned. And I'm not saying this because they've lost 2 games. I said this heading into the series. We knew that they were overwhelmed. They're undermanned. They're not overmanned, sorry. And what they are dealing with now is a Cavaliers team that in Game 1 was blown out. They played terribly. In Game 2, they had a 20-point lead, and they blew that. In Game 3, they won by 30 points. And in the last game, they blew them out again, although the Celtics did come back and make a bit of a contest of it late. The point I'm making with this is an excellent coaching job by Tyronn Lue, first of all, and credit to LeBron James for being versatile enough to adapt his role on the offensive end, which has helped put them in this position where they now have the momentum heading into Game 5. Now, as I was saying, Boston, this is the expected outcome, right? 2 games apiece because Boston does not play very well on the road, but they play very well at home. So this makes Game 5 and potentially Game 7 very interesting. Because if the reality that the Cavs face is they still have to win 1 game in Boston. So, whichever game they get, assuming they get 1, whichever game they get will be a classic. Because I don't see the Celtics just laying down without a fight. Game 6 will be a blowout either way for the Cavs. You know, I can't see that any other way. We'll see the Celtics fight, but they cannot compete with Cleveland when their role players are going. And that's a big thing we've seen, the emergence of Tristan Thompson, who, if Cleveland makes it to the finals, and they play up against either Golden State or Houston, what they have now with Tristan Thompson gives a punter's chance. We know the dominance that LeBron has on the offensive end. But now you can put him in pick and roll, genuine pick and roll situations. Even when you're playing with Kevin Love in those screen situations, he wasn't rolling to the basket as hard as what Tristan Thompson does. Plus, they have the ability to crash the boards. This is 2016 all over again. This is how they actually beat the Warriors in 2016. So looking forward, everyone's saying that it's going to be a foregone conclusion. Whoever comes out of the West will just simply roll over who's representing the Eastern Conference. They may be right, but do not underestimate a team like Cleveland, because we have seen them do this before in 2016. Different roster. Obviously, you had Kyrie Irving as well. There's a little bit more depth here, and there's a little bit more experience as well. So I'm not willing to say that it's going to be a sweep or it's going to be an absolute bloodbath. We might see some competitive games. But let's get back to to talking about this series as much as I want to avoid it. And from Boston's standpoint, they need to figure out a way to get bigger, i.e. do they put Baines in to start alongside with Horford to counter Tristan Thompson and Kevin Love just crashing the boards? And if they do that, are they then sacrificing what makes Boston such a good team, and that's their speed at every single position? They've also got to figure out how to get Tatum and Brown off at the same time. They're playing well in spurts, both of these guys, but in this series, both of them are yet to play well at the same time. If those guys can get going a little bit more, and they're able to control the backboards, and yeah, they've still got a chance. Look, this series is still 2-2. And we saw this up against Milwaukee. The series was 2-2 then as well. And Milwaukee's not that bad of a team. Talent-wise, they're right up there with Cleveland. But of course, the difference is the experience factor that Cleveland has. Milwaukee doesn't have that, obviously. And when you have LeBron, who's so comfortable on the offensive end, and he knows how to get foul calls, he knows how to manipulate situations to be in an advantage over his defender at all times, whether it's getting inside their head a little bit or whatever. He is playing the best I've ever seen him play on the offensive end from a scoring standpoint. Yes, there's a lot of turnovers. I get that. The ball is in his hands a lot. That's to be expected. I don't think Boston has a real counter to LeBron. And it may be a situation where Boston may have to realistically look at it, say, and concede that they cannot stop LeBron, and just make him work for everything, but slow down and shut down everybody else. Make LeBron score 60, 70 points. Make it happen. That might be their best option to win this series. But I do expect, despite how boring, for lack of a better term, the first 4 games have been. I mean, there was a little bit of excitement in Game 2 when the Cavs had that big lead and the Celtics came back. But beyond that, it hasn't been good basketball. But as I said, if Cleveland wants to get to the finals, they have to get that win in Boston. And whether it's Game 5 or Game 7, that game will be a classic. So we should have one classic game if Cleveland is going to go to the NBA Finals. If not, it's going to be one of the worst conference finals we've ever seen. And believe me, considering how bad the Eastern Conference has been, that is saying a lot. Now, we've got plenty of time for some questions, so let's get right into it. First question is, did I catch Jay Williams saying that LeBron would dominate Jordan because of his size? He's got a point. Jordan had issues with Magic and Penny and Grant Hill, and LeBron is bigger than all of them. He's got a shot. I guess you're referring to LeBron having a shot in a one-on-one matchup. Okay, so let's answer the first thing. Yes, I did see it because I got sent it about 10 times, so I did check it out. It was one of the more contrived things I've ever seen in my life. You could even see, there was a point where Jay Williams is saying, like, he was basically begging Jalen Rose to admit that he's got somewhat of a point. He was trying so hard to make that point. That's an impossible point to make. But let's go with what he was saying, though, because LeBron is bigger than Jordan, he was going to dominate him. This is what Jay Williams was saying, right? Believe me, please don't take me out of context there. I am quoting somebody. So if that's the standard, if somebody is bigger, then wouldn't Anthony Mason have dominated Michael Jordan too? Anthony Mason was bigger than both of them. And he was a ball handler. He played on the perimeter, excellent defender. He was one of the few guys you could say could legitimately guard all 5 positions. Remember what he did to Hakeem Olajuwon in games 4 and 5 of the NBA Finals in '94, when it was him that it wasn't Charles Oakley, it wasn't Patrick Ewing, it was Anthony Mason who did the good job on Hakeem and allowed the Knicks to actually go up in that series 3-2. So, if we're going by size, then I guess Anthony Mason would dominate both of them, right? I'm just putting it out there. The second part of your question is saying that Jordan had issues with Magic, Penny, and Grant Hill. Well, I would argue with all of that, by the way. Against Magic, yes, Scottie Pippen did a very good job on Magic Johnson in Game 2 of the NBA Finals. In Games 3, 4, and 5, Magic tore up Scottie Pippen and they had to put Jordan back on him. Watch the tapes, watch the games. Don't go with what idiots say on ESPN and they keep regurgitating this thing that Scottie Pippen turned the tide in that series. He did not. Penny Hardaway, same thing. They started in 96 with Scottie Pippen on Penny Hardaway. Penny Hardaway scored 45 points in Game 1 of the 96 Conference Finals. They put Jordan on him the rest of the way. He barely got off. Grant Hill, they never matched up in the playoffs. I'm not going to... It's impossible to really dissect that. But let's just assume for a second you are correct and that he struggled with Magic, Penny, and Grant Hill. What about LeBron James and who he has struggled against? Jason Terry, Paul Pierce, Paul George, J.J. Barea, Danny Green, Andre Iguodala, Kawhi Leonard. I mean, I could rack off so many names. I could run off so many names of players that have torn up LeBron James in huge situations in the NBA Finals or the Conference Finals or just playoff series in general. If we're going to say that Jordan struggled big time against Magic, Penny, and Grant Hill, all three of which have won gold medals, by the way, and all three of them would have been Hall of Famers, first ballot Hall of Famers, had it not been for injuries. Of course, Magic Johnson's one of the top 3 or 4 players of all time, by the way. Let's not forget that. If we're going to say that Jordan struggled against those guys, then we've also got to say that LeBron struggled against much more inferior talent than Magic, Penny, and Grant Hill. And if we're talking one-on-one, there is no passing involved. There isn't a whole lot of rebounding involved in one-on-one basketball. It is primarily scoring and defense. Jordan led the league in scoring 10 times, one of the greatest scorers, if not the greatest scorer of all time. I would never dispute that. You could talk about Wilt Chamberlain, you could talk about others that come to mind, Kobe Bryant at times, great streak scorer of all time. But I would go with Jordan right up there. Plus, Jordan was the greatest defensive player of his time. Or at least up there. One of the greatest perimeter defenders of all time. LeBron James has been a 5-time all-first-team defensive player. At a time where there hasn't been defensive depth on the perimeter in the NBA. Jordan was competing with Alvin Robinson, Dennis Rodman, Joe Dumas, Jeff Malone, Gary Payton. I could go on and on and on about the defensive firepower that was on the perimeters that every team in the NBA had during that era. And Jordan was first team pretty much every single year until 98 that he played a full season for. And there's just no comparison defensively. Offensively, there's no comparison either in a one-on-one situation. And then defensively, there's even less of a comparison. And then are we going to talk about the mental toughness? Please. This isn't even I cut the cord for a reason. Stop sending me these videos of, obvious clickbait that the person who's saying it himself isn't even sure of what he's saying. Please, Jalen Rose, please admit that I've got some kind of a point. No, you don't have a point. It's terrible. Next question. We're going to have a lot of LeBron questions here by the looks of it. Does LeBron stat pad? Yes. Next question. I should probably explain this. Just look at this season. For whatever reason. It's like he gave up on trying to get anywhere near getting home court advantage in the playoffs. It's like he kind of resigned to the fact that, he wasn't going to win the title this year. I'm not trying to psychoanalyze him. I just found it odd that in his 15th year, at the age of 33, that he would finally play all 82 games of a regular season for the first time, right? A meaningless game in the 82nd game when they were locked into the 4 spot. They couldn't go up, they couldn't go down. And for whatever reason he played. And yet, coincidentally, he played just enough minutes so he could keep his streak of double-digit scoring games going. You telling me that's not stat padding? Better examples we could throw at it, the 2014 NBA Finals, when I think it was like 63%. I saw a video of B-Ball Breakdown. It's a fantastic channel. I'm sure you guys have heard of it. If you're listening to my podcast, I guarantee you've heard of this channel, where they went through and they analyzed all his production during the 2014 Finals. At 63 or 65%, I can't remember what it was, percent of his points came when his team was down 15 points or more. And then, of course, he can get up and say, well, if you would have told me prior to the series that I'd be averaging XYZ in points, rebounds, and assists while shooting blah, 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 and the percentages, I would have taken that. But yet we're down 3-1. Yeah, well, it's because it's in garbage time. It's essentially garbage time. 2017 Finals absolutely applies to this as well. The one time I would say his production was at a premium and it really impacted his team big time. Well, there's 2 times, both against Golden State. The 2015 Finals when he lost. You had Dellavedova, you had Mozgov, such immortal players alongside him. You also had Tristan Thompson, J.R. Smith, and yet LeBron's production actually allowed them to actually be competitive in that. And they were actually up 2-1 in that series. And I would have voted for him as finals MVP that year, despite them losing. And of course, the 2016 finals, not the first 4 games. It was pretty pathetic, those first 4 games. But man, did he come on strong in those last 3 games. So, I don't know why I started talking. I guess I felt the need to be nice to him. And people say I hate this guy. But, yes, he does stat pad. And I think that's why you see so many people that are critical of Russell Westbrook are fans of LeBron James. Because Russell Westbrook, if you're going to say that Westbrook stat pads, you've got to admit that LeBron stat pads, right? If you're fair. But the thing is, they're not fair. They're looking at it, whatever LeBron does is justified. And that's another thing that I've noticed. I was meaning to talk about this when I was talking about the Cavs and Celtics series. It slipped my mind. I'm glad that, it came up now. Is how quickly that LeBron James fans will turn any opportunity, they will throw their teammates or the teammates of LeBron. They're not their teammates. They don't play for the Cavs. But any teammate of LeBron, they will throw them under the bus whenever they start struggling. Say, LeBron's by himself. Kevin Love has played excellent these playoffs. He's played really, really well. Same with Kyle Korver. And believe me, they will throw him under the bus at any opportunity too. And we're seeing it now after games 3 and 4, which they actually won, right, by the way. And now it's like, well, Kevin Love is trash. Look at what LeBron has to, carry to the NBA Finals once again. Are you kidding me? This is why people have such a hard time dealing with LeBron James fans. And I remember getting a question whether I actually dislike LeBron or do I dislike his fans. It is completely the fans. Because they are not fans of the game. They do not respect the game. They do not respect the team. I'll tell you why they don't respect the team. When you talk to a LeBron James fan and they bring up 2016, do they say the Cavs came back and won the NBA final, or do they say LeBron came back and won the title down 3-1? And then they'll turn around to whoever is arguing for Jordan being 6 for 6. Oh, never mind. That's a team accomplishment. Well, like you just got to shake your head at that point. Whenever you're arguing anything with anybody, whether it's politics or whatever, when the standards are that inconsistent, there's no way you can ever come to a reasonable conclusion with these guys. There's just nothing. There's no way you can do it. Next question is, well, of course, it's Michael Jordan versus LeBron James again, because why not? Did Michael Jordan have more help than LeBron James? Well, this really ties into everything I was just saying. From a coaching standpoint, yeah. Although that's a little bit overplayed as well, because I thought Tyronn Lue did a fantastic job in the 2016 finals. And I think Spoelstra did a really, really good job in getting him to play as much as you could at that point, a specific role and not try to do everything on the court, which really nullified everybody else. Of course, that started to wear down in 2014, and guys like Dwayne Wade and Chris Bosh were complete afterthoughts, and it's no wonder that they got eviscerated in the finals by the Spurs. Now, getting back to the question, did Jordan have more help than LeBron James? You can make a real good argument that they had very similar, comparable talent early on in their careers. And Jordan got them to the playoffs as a rookie. He didn't really get them to the playoffs in his second year because he missed so many games. Although he did impact, because they only won 30 games and they still somehow made the playoffs. It was probably, and I haven't looked into this, but I feel pretty confident in saying this, it was probably the worst record that a team has had to make the playoffs as the 8th seed. Then the next year they made the playoffs again and they were swept again by the Celtics. But prior to Scottie Pippen, and even when Pippen was in his early years, and this is when the Bulls started to emerge as a threat in the Eastern Conference, you could argue that he had very similar talent around him than what LeBron had prior to him going down to South Beach. So, and then of course once Pippen developed, he finally had an all-star to play with, but he's the only all-star he's ever played with. Now, I don't buy into this whole thing that, playing with an all-star is the defining factor of whether a player is worth anything or not. Because Tony Kukoc was never an all-star, and he was incredibly valuable for them in the 97 and the 98 playoff run. Dennis Rodman was never an all-star for them, and he was great for them in the 96 season. He wasn't an all-star. People say that Dennis Rodman should have been Finals MVP in 96, and I really don't argue that. I would have personally voted for Jordan because Jordan's scoring opened up things, because they were going up against a great Sonics team. At the end of the day, what's more important, rebounding or scoring? Rebounding is damn important because you can't score without the ball, but what is the one statistic that determines winning or losing in a game of basketball? And it's points. Now, everything sort of funnels into points, but you can out-rebound a team, but if they outscore you, you still lose the game. So I would say scoring is marginally more important than rebounding. Now, getting back to my point, going a little bit of a rant here, is you could argue that, as I said, they have similar talent levels prior to LeBron leaving for South Beach and Scottie Pippen becoming an all-star. Now, you may argue that, well, hold on a second, didn't LeBron get his team to the NBA Finals? Yeah, that's true. From the number 2 seed. Let's not forget that. They were the number 2 seed. And if you're going to say, well, that's in the Eastern Conference, then your whole argument has just gone out the window for how great he has been in getting to the NBA Finals, because it's the Eastern Conference. So you can't have these different standards. You can't say, on one hand, getting to the Finals was great, but if I say, well, they were the number 2 seed, well, you say, well, that doesn't count because the East was so bad. That doesn't really count. They still have a bad team. They didn't have that bad of a team. Relatively speaking, in the Eastern Conference, they didn't have that bad of a team. Larry Hughes was producing for them. Ilgauskas was producing for them. Boobie Gibson was producing for them at point guard. Everyone wants to talk about LeBron's performance in Game 5 against the Pistons. Check out the numbers for Game 6. Who was the leading scorer for the Cavs in Game 6 at home to close that series out? It was Boobie Gibson. It wasn't LeBron James. The point that I'm making is if we're going to be fair about the first parts of their career, it was very close. And then the second parts of their career, that's not even close. Because you got Scottie Pippen, you got Dennis Rodman, and Tony Kukoc versus Dwayne Wade versus Chris Bosh versus Kyrie Irving versus Kevin Love. And I'm not even going to get into the role players because, honestly, all those players that I listed for LeBron's help, all of them are easily better than Tony Kukoc, as invaluable as his scoring was in that second repeat. But we're talking now a big difference because you look at Chris Bosh, you look at the productions that Chris Bosh and Kevin Love had prior to playing with LeBron. You also look at what Kyrie Irving was ascending to. People want to say that LeBron actually turned his career around. Well, no, that's not true at all. Kyrie Irving was already an all-star. He's only, 20, 21 by the time LeBron got there. Who knows what Kyrie Irving would have been able to do without LeBron? I would be the first to admit that he would not be a world champion if it was not for LeBron, but I will also go the other way and say there's no chance in hell that Vince McMahon, cue the Vince McMahon music, but there's no chance that LeBron James would have and the Cavs would have won in 2016 with any other point guard, Russell Westbrook, or anyone else included, other than Kyrie Irving. Kyrie Irving's ability to break down the defense off the dribble and score with getting inconsistent touches, because it was the LeBron offense is, if he's playing alongside Dwayne Wade or Kyrie Irving, instead of nullifying them and turning them into shooters, it's my turn, your turn, my turn, your turn. So they're not consistently getting the ball. So there's very few players that can be productive in that environment as well. The point that I'm making, I will get to this. The point that I'm making is no, Michael Jordan did not have more help than LeBron James. And if anyone tells you otherwise, they did not watch the games. They do not know their basketball history. It's just that simple. Because if you look at the history of guys like Dwayne Wade, Kevin Love, Chris Bosh, Kyrie Irving, and you know the history. Look, the great equalizer this, you might say Scottie Pippen was excellent in 94. And I'm going to get to that. I'm going to do an entire show breaking down why the Bulls were able to win only 2 less games without Michael Jordan. A big reason for it is they underachieved in 93. They were essentially burned out, especially Pippen and Jordan, who just came off not just winning back-to-back titles, but they had also gone and played for the Dream Team. So I guess their motivation just wasn't there to win a whole lot of games. They won 57 games in the regular season, but they weren't playing hard. They were coasting. I'm not making excuses for it. Watch the games. Watch the intensity level of the 91-92 season as opposed to the 92-93 season. And then, of course, Jordan retires. Every game's valuable at that point because without Jordan, you don't have that security blanket. They bring in Pete Myers, yes, of course, but they also bring Ron Harper in. They brought in Luke Longley. They brought in Tony Kukoc. All three were valuable pieces. Steve Kerr as well in the second three-peat run. So these guys were not terrible players, and they, of course, everyone had to lift their game, and they did win 2 less games. But they also got bounced in the second round against the Knicks, a team they never lost to until Jordan was not there. And they didn't lose to them again in 96. There's a huge difference between winning 3 straight titles and losing in the second round of the Eastern Conference. There's a massive difference between the two of them. And then, of course, the other side, if Scottie Pippen was so great, and I am a fan of Scottie Pippen, but if Scottie Pippen was so great, why is it that when Jordan returned in 95, they were barely a 500 team? And when Jordan came back, they became they went 13-4. They shot up to the 5th seeding in the Eastern Conference, and they were able to get out of the first round. If Jordan didn't come back, there's a big chance that they weren't going to even make the playoffs, the Chicago Bulls. And then beyond that, what happened after the 98 season? Pippen was never an All-Star. Actually, his last All-Star appearance was 97, because in the 98 season, Pippen missed a huge portion of the season and he wasn't even selected as an All-Star. And then, of course, the 99 season, I should say, was a lockout, so there was no All-Star game. 2000 and beyond, he was never an All-Star again. So, I mean, you could make a very convincing argument that a lot of Pippen's accolades did not come in spite of playing alongside Michael Jordan, but were a result of Michael Jordan. So if Michael Jordan and of course Scottie Pippen is the ultimate crown jewel in terms of saying that MJ played with, a Hall of Famer, or you look at his talent around him. But that was a result of Jordan himself. So Jordan is now being held accountable for making players better. It gives me a headache. I was in such a good mood to start this episode off, with the Rockets game and everything. All right. Thanks for joining us. See you later. No. Seriously, thanks for joining us. Thanks for sending the questions in, even if I obviously disagree with them. A couple of big game 5s coming up. We will see one game. I am confident we will see one great game in the Celtics and Cavs series. Remain positive with me, guys. And we are going to see a showdown in the next 2 or 3 games between the Rockets and Warriors. That will be incredible. That will be one team trying so hard to get over the top and the other team just clawing their way and doing whatever they can to maintain their position. It's going to be brilliant. Next episode will be coming up after after both game 5s, unless if something incredible happens. And I've got some historical episodes that will be coming up as well. I might be throwing them your way in some of the off days when I'm saying, I'll be doing episodes covering game 5s. Maybe in some of those break days, I'll put some other episodes up as well. So keep an eye out for those episodes. And over the next few days as well, or next couple of weeks, I will be very busy. I will do my best to maintain this schedule. If not, I apologize. But please be patient with me. It does take some time getting these episodes out to you. And yeah, thanks for joining us, and enjoy the games, guys.